Welcome to How to Get on a Watchlist, the new podcast series from Encyclopedia Geopolitica. In each episode, we'll sit down with leading experts to discuss dangerous activities. From assassinations and airliner shootdowns through to kidnappings and coups, we'll examine each of these threats through the lenses of both the dangerous actors seeking to conduct these operations and the agencies around the world seeking to stop them.
In the interest of operational security, certain tactical details will be omitted from these discussions. However, the cases and threats which we discuss here are very real.
I'm Louis H. the founder and co-editor of Encyclopedia Geopolitica. I'm a researcher in the field of intelligence and espionage with a PhD in intelligence studies from Loughborough University. I'm an adjunct professor in intelligence at Sciences Po Paris, and in my day job, I provide geopolitical analysis and security-focused intelligence to private sector corporations.
I'm Alexandra Szokiewicz, a co-editor of Encyclopedia Geopolitica. I'm a multilingual security and intelligence professional with a master's in international security from Sciences Po Paris. I've served in both consulting and in in-house roles, bridging the gap between analysis and operations, and focusing on threat identification and monitoring, geopolitical intelligence and strategy, and security support to various public and private audiences.
So in today's episode, we're talking about how to live a double life. And joining us for this is Colonel Olivier Mas. A graduate of the École de Guerre, Colonel Mas worked for 15 years at France's intelligence service, the DGSE. His first years were spent in service to a special unit dedicated to undercover operations. It was here that he became adept in establishing a false identity, or a legend in French, to carry out operations around the world. Next, Olivier joined the Intelligence Directorate, where he was successively responsible for counterterrorism activities and political intelligence, as well as counterespionage. Twice he acted as head of station in sensitive areas overseas and/or high security environments. Olivier left active service in the summer of 2017 to launch a fantastic YouTube channel called Talks with a Spy, which now boasts 174,000 subscribers. He's the author of 2 books on the world of intelligence, Profession Espion, Profession Spy, from the publishing house Les Éditions Aubec, and J'étais un autre et vous ne le savez pas, I Was Someone Else and You Didn't Know It, from the publishing house Les Éditions de l'Observatoire. Olivier is an expert lecturer and a regular speaker for both private companies such as Air France, Vinci, Matra, and Rothschilds Group, and for the media. And his latest project, a novel entitled The Walk-In, will be published by the publishing house Les Éditions Flammarion in October. So Olivier, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for your invitation.
So the question we always like to ask a guest, but with a background and a career like yours, I'm really eager to ask this one. How did you find yourself in this type of work? How did you get into a career like this?
You know, my father was a military officer from Saint-Cyr, the French equivalent for West Point or Sandhurst for the British. So I joined the army myself, and during 13 years, I was in the regular army with 4 years spent in the special forces. And then at some point of my career, I decided that I wanted to join the secret services. And so here it is. I mean, my father has a friend who was a member of SDEC. It was the former name of DGSE. And it looked fun. I mean, it has a lot of stories to tell, not in details, of course. Everything was a bit secret, but it was a mystery. And so I wanted to be part of this dream and mystery. And I was not disappointed by the first years and all my career in DGSE.
That's amazing. So why do intelligence agencies use clandestine operatives such as yourself? What's the advantage of having those people who can go undercover in situations like that?
Most of the operatives working for intelligence services, they have the same. They work in the embassies, and they have diplomatic passports, and they are conducting operations under their real name. But sometimes it's not sufficient. I mean, you have sources, contacts, people that you want to get in contact with, and they won't accept to speak to an official, to speak to a real spy or someone they know that he's a spy or her a spy. She's a spy. So it's can be interesting for secret services to have people with a legend, as we say in French. So with a fake ID, a fake name, a fake job. So it can be a history teacher, as I was. It can be a journalist. It can be a humanitarian worker. Something like that. So yeah, in some cases it's very important. And imagine you're a Russian spy too. It's you are an enemy for a lot of countries in the world, especially now with the war in Ukraine. So it's important for them to create legends of people that coming from South of America. We saw a lot of examples like that. So the Russian spy is an Argentinian citizen, and he can speak perfectly good Spanish. And so this helps too. And in the French doctrine also, what is very interesting sometimes is to use this kind of agent in very sensitive areas where it's the civil war and where you don't have an embassy. The embassies are closed because it's becoming too dangerous, or the country where you are sent in is too big, so you have the capital thousands of miles away, and you have an area where you want to get into and you want to get the intelligence out of this specific area. And so you don't have the embassy, of course, it's too far. So you send this kind of operatives, and this can be very useful.
So given that a clandestine agent can't use, the traditional diplomatic communications channels, how do you communicate with your home agency when you're undercover? And then I'm thinking back to TV shows like Le Bureau de Legends, the excellent French series about the DGSE's clandestine unit, where they have, handlers that they talk to. Do you have one dedicated handler? And how often do you talk to them? How do those communications work?
Yeah, for clandestine officers, these communications tools is the key, of course, and it can be problematic. It's the way the counter-espionage team can locate you, because you have a secret device, because you have communication with your country, and everybody can discover that you're a spy. So communication is tricky. I have an example of one of my books, of two Israeli agents, clandestine, sous légende, in the 50s that are very famous, Cohen in Damascus, and Wolfgang Lotz, he was sent to Cairo. And both of them were detected because of their communication with Israel. Yeah, it's a tricky business. So most of the time you have a computer and you have something hidden in your computer that allows you to have some communications. You can send text messages, you can send pictures, and you can sometimes have a video exchange with your handler. He's not a handler because you're an agent. You know what you're doing, but it's a help and it's a communication. It's someone who look after you, and so it's a time of relief, because you are hiding everything with all the people you're talking to during all the day, and once a week, for instance, you have this 10 minutes walk with someone that know who you are, and you can speak truly with this guy or this woman, and it's communication is very important. And what I like, there is a sequence in the Bureau de Legends. You mentioned this TV show, the French TV show, which is very realistic, and it starts with communication between the main character and with the handler, and he's lying to the handler. And when I see that, of course, there's something that is not going well. It's tricky, it's wrong, it's totally wrong. So there must be a total trust, of course, between the agent sous légende on the ground and the handler who is in Paris.
Yeah, you mentioned that communications lifeline is really important, both from an operational perspective, but also from a psychological perspective as well for the person who's on the ground. What do you do if you lose contact with your home agency while you're on mission? How does that work? How do you sort of realize that the contact has been cut, and what do you do next? How do you decide what your next steps will be?
It never happens, or at least it never happened to me. We try to manage. If we have a problem, we'll manage to solve it. We'll find a solution. And I think that in the French system, DGSE, we are selecting our clandestine officers in the way that they are. You can put them in the middle of nowhere, and they will always find a way to find the contact and to call back the agency to find solutions. You know, when your handler is in Paris, your service is in Paris, and you are in the middle of Sahel. If you have a problem, girl, solve it. You're alone, so you have to do it yourself. And this will happen like that. I mean, you'll find the solution yourself. You train for that.
So that brings me on to a question about what sort of person makes a good clandestine operative. And you mentioned your background in the military, where I think there's often a very similar mindset of, you face with a problem, don't just wait for orders, solve it. Is it mainly former soldiers? How do you profile someone to be in such a high pressure role?
Yeah, in this small unit in France, people are selected. It's not is half or maybe 1/3 of military background, and the others are civilian. You don't want to appear as a spy, so it's very good to have people that has no military background. Myself, I had the problem that when I had surveillance team for training in Paris, they will tell me that, oh, be careful, you're a little bit formal. We can see that you're former military, and so that was a little bit something problematic for me. But I had to solve this problem. So we have a lot of civilians background agents in this work. I think that's, and maybe it can be a problem, but I think in the small team we have been inside, we don't have a lot of the structures or the procedures. We are easygoing or cowboys, things like that. We like to travel. We like to travel on our own. We like people. We like to discuss. We we are interested in people. We like exchanges with people. People trust us. So I think women and men that were inside these specific units, we are all seem alike, and we have the same capacities. And so sometimes you would say to the service, "Oh, I think that this one should fit well in our unit. So let's try. Let's try this guy or this woman. We want them to pass the tests and the training to see if it's green light." And so it was the way it works.
I want to go back to what you said earlier about the training, and you've referred to the fact that these undercover operatives are trained to essentially face any kind of situation that they may have to deal with by themselves while in the field. What does the training look like for these operatives? How long does it last? What do the tests look like? Is there something you can tell us a little bit more about?
Yeah, you have to build the trust of the agent. So there is a lot of training while you are in Paris, and you have to lie to people. And you see the training that we see in a American movie with the spy games. You know, you have to appear in a window. So I did this exercise, the exact same exercise before I saw the movie. You know, it was, and so this is very helpful because the guy who trained me asked me, "You see this second floor? You have to appear on the window, okay?" And he asked me, "What will you do? What is your idea?" So I had to think, what could I do? And I tried, yeah, maybe I'm a security official and the president will go in this street. And so I have to check from the windows if there is this is very bad. Find something else. Okay. So maybe, yeah, I'm living with the neighbors on the next floor, and my kids was playing with the balloon, and the balloon fell on the balcony, and so I have to find the balloon for my kids, and so this is a good one, and so it worked very well. So I knock at the door and I explain my problem with the balloon, and obviously it worked, and it was a lady, and I came in, and I had access to her apartment and to the balcony. And so this kind of example and training give you trust. I mean, if you are confident in the lie you are giving to people, and you do it in a spanning way, and everything goes well. It works, really. It works. It's really easy if you have a nice face and your smiling attitude. You can sell everything.
That sounds fascinating. And so you talked about this training. Is this standardized for everyone, or is there sort of a standard length, or would it depend on the person and the capacities that they already come in with?
Yeah, interesting. But yeah, it's formalized. I mean, every agent are going through the same kind of exercises. There is this cafe exercise also. We saw it in the TV show Le Bureau des Légendes. It's the same kind of exercise. I mean, you are in a cafe, and you have your training officer is inside the coffee, and you have to engage with someone and to make him or make her talk about their life, and at the end you have to make him or make her talk a lot, and to have telephone numbers at the end. So the same when you have this habit to do it regularly, and it's working well, it's a good exercise. So lots of people from DGSE are doing this kind of this cafe exercise, and I would say that the female officers are doing a wonderful job. I mean, it's more easy. It's easier for them because they go with the men and ask him a telephone number, and he's very delighted to give them their telephone number, and they are never called back. They're very disappointed.
Excellent. Talking a little bit more about the recruitment, how do these légendes get recruited by the DGSE? Is there, for example, a different pool of people for, say, the technical staff, and then the people who get pulled into these légende jobs, or are they taken from sort of the same pool? Is there an official recruitment page where you can apply? How does that work? I've seen a few things pop up, but I'd love to hear your perspective on this.
No, nothing official, of course. Usually, this unit recruits inside the GC, so people that have always been inside. And this is something interesting and good because they know how the intelligence works. They know how the analyst is looking for. And so when you are on the ground, you have the idea of which piece of intelligence will be interesting in Paris, and how the analyst will write his report to our authorities. So it's very good, I think, to recruit from inside the service some people that will fit the job. But sometimes you have some specific profiles of people, engineers, like always the série Bureau des Légendes. There is this engineer working on nuclear facilities. And so this is very interesting because you can send her directly in Iran, and she'll be credible because she has all the background. If you sent me in Tehran on this field working on nuclear issues, of course they will detect me immediately. So sometimes for specific profiles, we'll try to recruit someone from outside, and make an interview, make a proposition, and then if the people accept, make the tests and try to train it. And this kind of profile, once the training will be different. It won't be inside the service, the official buildings. Of course, it will be trained from outside in Paris in clandestine facilities.
So that raises a really interesting question. You talked about living as a history teacher, for example. Was that chosen because you had a good knowledge of history? I imagine you wouldn't be a very good history teacher if they asked you a question you couldn't answer. And Do they try and craft cover identities that you can live as like an actor playing out a role, or do they try and find something more authentic to who you already are?
Yeah, the key for a good legend, it's to stick more possible to your real, to your real identity. Of course, it's if you are discovered or you have the security agency in the country where you're working that has some doubt about you, so you'll be interrogated and they will ask you some questions. It can be very detailed questions about where do you live, describe the building where you live, what do you find around this building, you take the train station, what is the name of the train station, etc., etc. So in a legend, you have so many things to remember. If it's so far from the things you know, it's not possible. So yeah, it's why personally I chose this history teacher guy, because of course, yeah, I like history, I know history. My former wife was a teacher too, and so I had some meetings and dinners with her colleagues, and very annoying dinners sometimes. Not because of the teachers, of course, but when you stick together, you always speak about your everyday life and administrative work, and so I had these discussions between teachers. I knew how they were going, so I was able to fake the fact that I was a history teacher. So I think this is important. And when it's not possible, because you remember, if you are a Russian agent and you have to create something totally different and a real new history background and so on. But so the Russian, what they do is that they are trained and they are sent to a country, and they live before being active and collecting actual intelligence. They can spend years living their fake life, and so that they create memories with the new idea. And when they have to explain who they are and where they're coming through and from, they are able to tell truth.
Yeah. And how long do operatives tend to keep an identity? Is there an average, for example, in an operative's life? Would you say, I don't know, you have 5, 6, or is that really varying significantly depending on the person and how long the career is, of course? Is there sort of an average of time that you would keep one identity?
Yeah, I mean, it's so long to create an identity. If it's working and it has not been discovered, you keep the same identity for years. For France, I mean, it's exhausting to be sent abroad with the fake idea, to have to lie to everybody all the time for so long. So, I mean, I think it's not a job that you can do for many years. I think that 4 or 6 years is a maximum, and then do something else. But you can see that some Russians, they do that for 10, 20 years. But I think this is a little bit extreme, and I don't think that other services like the Americans or the British are doing this on this period of time.
Yeah, that makes sense. And another question on that: how important are language skills in all of this? And do you ever pretend to not be French as an agent of the DGSE, but be of a different nationality, for example?
Yeah, I mean, for a French national, it's not important to act as a foreigner. I could say that I could be Belgium, but it could be tricky because some expressions won't. Someone will try me in Belgium. Oh, you don't know. It's too difficult, I think. So no, let's be for me. I think all clandestine agents for France, they are French, and France is enough neutral that you can use this background all over the world without any problems. I know that Sometimes the Americans, they pretend they are Canadians. It's easier, but so that the language is so they have the same accent, so to a some certain extent, so it's easier for them. So, but for me, no. I mean, I speak English. Obviously, you can see that not very well, not enough to pretend that I'm not French, or you can see an accent. So no, yeah. For my missions as a clandestine agent, I was French.
That makes perfect sense. I'm thinking of the scene in Inglourious Bastards as well, where the counting sort of gives away the person, right? So
yeah, it's amazing, this scene. Yeah, in Italian. Oh yeah, you speak Italian. No?
In our last episode, we spoke with John Mendes, the CIA's former chief of disguise, about faking an identity and the technical support that goes into that. We talked about masks, ID documents, covert cameras, and other gadgets. But for you as an operator on the ground, what were the most important elements that you felt contributed to successfully getting through your mission, not getting caught?
As a former officer in the army, I had to change my physical appearance. I changed my cut. My hair were longer, and I could, before being sent abroad on a mission, I could see in the metro in Paris that the officers in civilian clothes that were in the metros, sometimes you recognize yourself. You have a glimpse. You said, "Oh, you're the one. You are an officer like me." And because of my new haircut, my former colleagues, nobody will look at me and said, "Okay, this is right." So I'm trying to become the legend and to live the legend I'm supposed to live with. So that was one of the key for me. It was to change my appearance, and then you have your fake documents that have been forged officially by different means. This is sensitive, so I can't explain really. But you have the trust in your idea. I mean, it's a true fake idea. And so when you are going abroad and you've been screened at the airport, you're totally convinced that your idea is gonna work, and so this helped a lot. You have your fake ideas. It's the wrong name, but it's real pictures, and the document won't be detected.
And what are the biggest risks of living undercover then?
Yeah, the bigger risk is to be discovered, of course. And all the clandestine agents, they have nightmares like this, especially for the one that's being as working for many years. So I did some nights. They have the nightmares that everybody in the street recognize him and say, "Oh, he's the one. He's a Russian spy. He's a French spy. He's working for DGSE," and so on. So you're always scared of that, and because you are not protected by your diplomatic idea, if you are detected, the country where you are operating, they can keep you in prison for years. And so this is not very nice, of course. You're working in Iran, I don't know, in Pakistan or countries like that are not very friendly, or even in Russia. I mean, with a legend, if you are detected, you're going to, that you're going to spend a month or years in prison. And this is not funny, of course. And if you are a regular spy working in embassies, the risk is less bigger, of course. I mean, if you're detected, you'll be sent back to your country. It's not very nice because you're here with your families, you have your apartment, and one day, the next day, tomorrow, you have to leave. You take your plane and you're back home, and you have failed, and you have to face the failure of your mission. But you're alive and you're safe and free back to your country. As a clandestine operative, you're sure that you'll be sent to prison. And if you are working in, I was doing that also in Sahel, in contact with terrorist groups. I mean, it's not the prison that you're facing; it's the death. So, of course, it's a stressful work for sure.
And I'd like to dig a little bit more into this. What actually happens when you return from an undercover mission? So you mentioned how stressful that environment is. There must be some kind of rehabilitation happening once you return. And how long until you get redeployed? What do you do in the meantime? How does that work? And one last question, sort of bundling that as well together, is what does that mean for sort of your personal life as well? Moving around like this and having to live under a fake identity.
Yeah, sometimes it's not very formalized also. I mean, in DGSE, or at least at my time. So what you have to do at the end of your mission also is to cut the ties with the contacts, the foreign contacts you had before. You don't want to do that abruptly because someone and switch off your telephone and throw away your telephone and never answer to the phones. This will attract doubts in the mind of people. So you keep your phone active for a couple of weeks and months. You answer the phone sometimes. And I remember one of my missions. After one of my missions, I received a phone call from a driver with who I spent many hours together. We were in the desert. We have no lights, no electricity. So we spent days and days speaking about everything. And we had a real friendship, something very strong. And it was really hurtful not being able to call him back. And so he just listened to my voice recorded message. But also I heard his voice, and I really wanted to pick up the phone and said, "Hey, how are you doing?" And that was not possible. So yeah, this is difficult, of course. One problem also for the clandestine operatives is sometimes you are experiencing a life with danger, with adrenaline, with a lot of pleasure also, because with danger comes the pleasure, and so you're living a life with very intense life, and you come back in your small house in the banlieue, in the suburb of Paris, and with your boring wife or something. I don't know. So sometimes there is a difference that is difficult to live with. In my example, my own example, I mean, I think that my character of I was playing, this history teacher, was boring, and my real life was maybe better than the one that I had for my legend. So it was easier for me to come back, and of course I was eager to see my family and my wife again, for sure. But I have some friends, we had some photographs, war photographs, or people who were dealing with mafias and living with big cars and parties, champagne. And so coming back to something more normal life was sometimes not very easy, of course. So this is a problem. And your last question was difficulty of living your real life with your family life. And this is for a clandestine operative something very important. So, because you are someone else, I mean, it's totally forbidden for you to contact your family once you are abroad. So if you send for 1 year, it's 1 year with no communication at all with your wife. So it's why sometimes we do 2 months missions and so on. So you just receive some news about your family through your text messages that are read by your handlers, of course, because it's going to be read. So it's really factual and very boring news. So it's very difficult for the family, of course, but also I found it's interesting for a couple, because you have no news about 2 months, and when you're back with your family and with your wife, I mean, it's the honeymoon again.
Well, we've been speaking with Olivier Mas about how to live a double life. After the break, we'll talk about how counterintelligence teams and hostile groups try to detect, prevent, and respond to infiltration.
You have been listening to How to Get on a Watchlist, the podcast series from Encyclopaedia Geopolitica. If you like this show, don't forget to check out our other content at Encyclopaedia Geopolitica, which you can find at howtogetonawatchlist.com, where you can find our analysis on various geopolitical issues, as well as reading lists covering topics like those discussed in the podcast. Please also consider subscribing to the podcast on your streaming platform of choice, giving us a rating, and joining our Patreon.
So, Olivier, you've talked about how everything that goes into infiltrating an organization or going undercover. What are the signs that your adversary, a counterintelligence agent, might look out for that could give some away who is living under a legend, who's not who they say they are?
Yeah, you can understand that something is going wrong if you have a surveillance on you. You can notice that someone is following you. Some details or your bedroom has been checked because you place your books and your wallets and your suitcase in the same certain way. I mean, it's a classic of the movies, but sometimes you do that. You know that someone came into your house while you were not there, and so of course this is a serious warning. But sometimes there is only a doubt, so you have to play the game. You are under stress. Of course, it's a difficult time. If you have the opportunity to report the incident to your service, that's good. But it's why you are trained and why you have built your legend for years before being sent on an operation. Even if you are contacted by a local service for interrogation, your legend should be strong enough so that you can answer the questions and make their doubts disappear. But sometimes it's no doubt. There is no more doubts. They know who you are, and they call you, and it's just not for interrogation. You go directly to prison. But you never know. This is the tricky part.
And are there any measures that the groups that you may infiltrate as a clandestine operative, are there any measures that they put in place to detect those légendes? Is there any sort of screening or vetting that you've seen throughout your career that they may employ to do that?
I mean, the one who are trained to detect legends is really the police officers or the counter espionage officers of the local services. So, yes, they have this trick. I mean, it's always the same kind of interrogation process. I mean, they ask you questions and they pass 1 or 2 hours and they come back with the same questions. And if your answers is different, there's a problem. And so this is the kind of tricks they use. And this is why you have to have experienced your legend real, because even if they ask you the same questions day after day, you'll tell the truth. You'll try what you have experienced in your double life, and yeah, it works like that.
I imagine that scenario where you're being questioned, that's really, the worst place to be. I imagine if a mission goes right, you never experience that. But in those kind of experiences, when things have gone wrong and you're under scrutiny, what is it that catches people out? Is it bad tradecraft? Is it that they crumble under questioning? You mentioned answering the same way every day. Is it the little details? What is it that goes wrong?
Sometimes you are operating in so sensitive areas where there's a lot of tensions, where you know that all around you it's only spies and fighters. So there are a lot of doubts on everybody. So you spend the first weeks and months of your deployment to convince people that you are not a spy. So this is one of the tricky parts. I mean, you are working in a very critical environment, and so everybody has doubts on everybody, and so it's why it's very important to never ask tricky questions. at some time of my career, I was working against war criminals, and I've been sent in a city where it was known that there were a lot of these criminals, and I had to detect them. Of course, I never ask a single questions about these war criminals, and everybody sometimes asks me, "Oh, are you not interested in these people?" And oh no, not at all. I'm not interested. I'm not dealing with that. And of course, I was all ears. So I think this is one of the things that will help you. Never ask too many questions. Let the people do the talking with you, and sometimes you can look surprised or interested and say, "Oh, yeah, funny, interesting," but never go too far on that slope. Don't ask too precise questions. And I think that's people that have been detected. Maybe it's one of the mistakes they make. They are too rushy, and they want to have results, and they want to get the intelligence fast, quickly, to send a good report to Paris and to be rewarded for the good piece of intelligence. No, you have 1, 2 weeks, 1 month, and you'll get your intelligence. So don't rush. Take your time.
Patience being an important virtue in intelligence work as well, I guess. You did talk earlier about noticing surveillance and other signs that you're being watched or suspected, and maybe even having doubt that they know. Is there any protocol that tells you when you should leave or and how you should leave potentially?
Yeah, as I told you that in the French system, we are not very good with protocols. You send the signals that you have detected to your authorities in Paris, and they will have meetings, and they will discuss, and they will decide if they have to call you back. And so there's no protocols, but the people who knows, they are all experienced people, guys or women and so on. And so they will have a meeting, and at the end of the meeting, they will have to take the decision. Okay, we'll pull him back. It's too dangerous. It's too risky. So there is no protocol. I mean, in the French system, as I told you, there will be a meeting, and it will be decided at the end what we'll do with the covert agent. Because of course, it's a work that's collapses. It's a legend that you have been building for years. So it's tricky to destroy this cover if it's not necessary.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And did you in your work ever have any near misses in situations like this? Anything where you sort of were close to things going potentially very, very wrong?
During my time as a special forces officer in my mission against war criminals, at this point, my fake ID was made of with my real first name, and my last name was fake. And so, at some point of my mission, in the middle of my mission, I answered the phone, and after my real first name, I told my true last name, so my true ID on the phone. That was terrible. That was a terrible mistake. But I heard that the guy I was talking to knew me through my first name, and he didn't notice that my mistake. So that was very uncomfortable with me. I sent immediately the message to my authorities in Paris, said, "Okay, I made this mistake." So we decided to stay, and I think it was a good decision because, obviously the people I was talking to through the phone didn't notice my mistake. But for the next missions I did with DGSE, I can tell you that everything was faked through my first name and last names. And I think it's a better option because your real identity. I mean, for decades, you are used to say your first and last names at the same time. So it's very dangerous. I will advise to the other colleagues to change all their names and first names.
So I'm curious about what happens, when a mission has gone successfully and at some point, or maybe unsuccessfully, and an organization realizes it's been infiltrated, that it has clandestine adversary officers in their ranks. What happens to them? I imagine it has a huge psychological impact.
It's terrible for an organization to be tricked, and so they didn't see, and after that, there's a work to be done inside this organization. Said, okay, who talks to this guy, this woman? What did you say? What was the subject? What were the questions? What are the secrets that you were able to extract from us? And so there is a lot of meetings to be done, conducted with all the people that have been in contact with this clandestine operative that have been detected, but too late. And now he's back to France or back to his country of origin. So yes, of course, it's a drama sometimes, because people they feel betrayed. They put the trust in you, and it worked, and they were totally convinced that you were not a spy, and so they gave you pieces of information. I mean, the guy, the guy from Mossad, Wolfgang Glotz, his fake ID, he was originally from Germany, and he was pretending he was a former Nazi officer, for a Jewish guy infiltrated. So all his friends that were Egyptian friends working in the army at very high rank, they told them lots of secrets, and after that they discovered he was working for Mossad, and so that was a terrible shock, of course, and for their career it's terrible. That career was over, and the friendship was totally destroyed, of course.
We've talked a lot in this episode about the TV show Le Bureau des Legends. I have a very soft spot for this show. I when I was learning French, this was one of the shows that really helped me learn it. And for any English speakers listening, it's available as The Bureau with English subtitles, and it's a very good look into French undercover work. You mentioned earlier, Olivier, that you found it quite realistic. Were there any aspects of the show you thought were unrealistic that didn't really reflect the life of a legend?
I mean, the main character of the Bureau des Légendes would be sacked very quickly. It's he survives and remains inside the service for 5 seasons, I think. So this is not realistic. I mean, the guy betrayed the trust and from the beginning, from day one. So he works for the Americans, and because he wants to. He's a free guy who is able to cooperate with foreign services because he wants to save his lover. So this is totally unrealistic. This is one of the points. I think also. Nobody's writing anything, but I think that 80% of the work of a spy is to be behind a desk like a journalist on the computer and writing reports. Of course, you don't want to see that in a show. It will be boring. But the real life of an agent is, most of the time he's writing reports. So, it's a very realistic show. They have a good cooperation between the showrunner and the DGSE. They had a lot of exchanges. They were able to ask a lot of questions, and so at the end of the season, you have some scenes that have been filmed inside the real buildings. So you have the aspect of it, the rooms, the meeting rooms, and so on. Everything is very realistic, and you have some agents that are not able to speak about what they do to their family, and they tell their families, if you want to know what is my work, go and see Le Bureau des Légendes, and you'll know. So it's close to reality.
And this flows really nicely in what I was going to ask you next is, how do you feel about the role of shows like Le Bureau des Légendes and putting the spotlight on intelligence agencies' work in general? So you mentioned you saying this, for example, to somebody, watch this and you'll see what I'm sort of doing. Do you think that these are then useful tools in educating the public about DGSE work, or is this something that can maybe even become an obstacle in some situations?
No, I think that Le Bureau des Légendes for DGSE was a dream. I mean, we had huge increase of volunteers to come inside the DGSE. And that was, of course, a good thing. And also, in the past, the secret services in France, it's always viewed by like something bad, something tricky, something unfair, something with a bad image, espionage. It's not like the British, where the James Bond or the heads of the Cambridge or Oxford at the top of the class, they joined the secret services and so on. That was not the case in France. So this kind of shows has been doing a very good work in improving the image in France for the secret services. And I would see, and the work also I'm doing through my YouTube channel, for my books, my conferences, is doing the same thing, I think, and it's one of my goals, to give to the audience and the public the image of someone who is professionals, who like their country, who follow the rules. We are always very controlled. We can't do everything we want, even if we are protected by fake IDs. We have techniques that are the mafia is using exactly the same techniques. I use my fake IDs to do a tricky business and disappear. And after that, of course, I'll be sent to prison immediately. So we are living in a world that is controlled by laws, by people that are sensible and things like that. So, I think this kind of show is very important to improve this image.
So the final question we like to ask our guests, and I think given a lot of the tensions you've talked about in a job like this, I'm really interested in your answer. When you were living as a clandestine, what kept you up at night? What were the big nightmare scenarios?
If I'm detected, what will happen? I will be able to see my family again? Will my service know that I have been disappeared? How many days it will last before they send the alarm? Something is wrong with Olivier. He's not answering, and so on. So this kind of problems, I was thinking about. And after that, will be able to, if I go to prison, how many months or years I will spend there? So, this was sometimes the kind of ideas I had.
I can imagine it was an incredibly tense line of work. Well, Olivier, thank you very much for joining us.
It was a pleasure to discuss with you. Thank you.
You've been listening to How to Live a Double Life with Olivier Mas. Olivier's books, Profession Espion, J'étais un autre et vous ne le savez pas, as well as his new book, Le Walk-In, will all be linked in our show notes, and we encourage any of our French readers in particular to take a look. Our producer for this show was Edwin Tran, and our researcher was Alex Smith. To all our listeners and our Patreon supporters, thank you very much for listening to and supporting How to Get on a Watchlist.
If you enjoyed this show, please consider checking out our other content at Encyclopedia Geopolitica. We'd also appreciate it if you could subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, or support us on Patreon. Thanks for listening.